Welcome back everyone for today's Love Transformation class, and I'm super excited because I'm joined by the beautiful Crystal Irom, who's got some pretty hard-hitting truths and some really interesting things to share in our conversation today. Welcome, Crystal.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited.
I know. We're actually going to be talking about reality TV dating shows, and everyone's got an opinion on this. And probably a lot of people have been binge watching dating shows recently. Why do you think this is so fascinating for people to get an insight into other people's love lives?
I think it's always easier and more fun to look at what other people are doing rather than focus on what you're doing. And I think with dating shows, there's sort of like a microcosm of everything we experience. They're like, it's over the top and things are much bigger and more romantic than in real life, but we can relate because ultimately they are people and they're acting in ways that we might also act or that we might want to act. It's very easy to sort of see yourself or to see the things that you really dislike about yourself in these characters that we're watching through a reality TV show. It's just fascinating. It's fascinating. It's like a study of human behavior.
And today specifically, we're going to dive a lot into the Bachelor franchise because most of our audience will have had some experience in whatever country you're tuning in from in watching The Bachelor. In particular, The Bachelor US is screened almost all around the world. We've just wrapped up a season with the latest Bachelor, but we're going to also talk a little bit generally about all of the Bachelor series. What are some of your early thoughts about this most recent series of The Bachelor?
I had a couple of thoughts. So the most recent series with Peter, I sort of watched it backwards because I hadn't seen when Peter was on The Bachelorette. I saw him for the first time watching his season of The Bachelor. And, watching this guy, I thought he's a pretty guy. He seems like a really sweet person. Definitely high quality in a lot of ways, but not strong in his masculine, not confident in not fully confident in who he is, and not fully confident to go after what he wants. Peter, my overall impression was just that his season was a little bit annoying because he seemed to push the drama. He seemed to really buy into the drama and he really fed into the women's drama. More than you really want to see. And it was interesting to me. It was like that was very attractive to him. When the women were emotional, when the women were fighting, he fueled it. He definitely didn't stop it. And I think even when the women weren't being dramatic, even in their interactions with him, when they were being very calm and very sort of open about how things were progressing and are just like, I'm trying to have a good time and get to know you. He's like, no, why aren't you crying? He wanted, and he sort of proclaimed himself a romantic. He's like, oh, I'm a romantic. So I think that's an interesting thing for anyone who sort of feels like a romantic is, does your definition of being a romantic mean that if love isn't hard, if there's not a lot of drama, does that mean it's not love? Because that's what I was getting from him, that if it's just easy and flowing, then something's wrong. That's not love that can stand the test of time. And actually, it's when I'm talking about it, I'm remembering one of the women in particular on his season. Her name was Kelly, and she was a lawyer. And they had met before the show even started. And actually, I think of the women who were on the show, she was definitely in the top 3 in terms of the way she was approaching it, where she was pretty laid back and she was doing something really, really right that most of the women don't do, which was that she had not decided that Peter was the one. In this show, I think this is a big thing that we see, and I think this is a big thing that translates to the way that we actually date. We look at sort of surface aspects of a person and decide oh my gosh, this is this is it. He's it. He's good looking. He's got a great job. He's so sweet. He's over 6 feet. This is my person. And I think a lot of women do that when they're dating. They take very little information about a man and they're like, oh, I could really see this being something. I really think he could be my person. And then definitely on The Bachelor, that is very much how they approach it. he's the one, I know he'll be a great husband. Now I just got to get him. That's like the energy that they have. So I would say Kelly did not have that energy. And I would also say Madison on this season did a really good job of not having that energy. Kelly even said to him, you know, it doesn't always have to be hard. Like, we can just have fun. We can just get to know each other. And he was just like, well, it's not supposed to be all fun. You know, it was really interesting because you could super clearly see how sort of committed he is to this struggle, to this idea that like, no, you have to fight for love. And Kelly was just like, I think we could just have a good time and enjoy each other. And he wasn't having it. She went home not that long after that. And I thought that was really interesting. So that was my overall impression, is that Peter's love blueprint is really sort of set up for struggle. He's looking for struggle. He feeds into emotional manipulation from women. And I think it made it a little bit annoying to watch as a viewer, because it's like, on some level, we want them to find love. You know, even when you're hate watching, you're kind of like, you kind of want them to end up with someone. So it's, yeah, that was my overall impression. And then I think when we met Peter's parents in a more in-depth way, it became very clear why he was the way that he was, why he got so sucked into the emotional manipulation, why he fed into the drama so much. You know, and as for the case for most people, our patterns don't usually come out of thin air. They come off of the way we're interpreting the things around us from the time that we're kids. So that's not to say you're abdicating responsibility and you can blame mom or you can blame dad. You cannot. You're an adult now. You have to, you know, do the work for yourself and sort of move past it. But Peter made a lot more sense once we saw mom.
Right. And what a lot of women in real life often complain about is that a lot of men don't have any tolerance for any degree of emotion. Yet we see that Peter was almost sort of attracted to a woman showing, really bearing a lot of emotion. And then we saw mum. Mm-hmm. So talk to us, let's dive a little bit more into that dynamic. Like, what made him have a bit more tolerance for that over emotional, I'm confused, you know, leaning in, pulling back type of drama-filled situations. Yeah. And then we see mum.
Yeah. So we all have what I like to call a love blueprint. I've heard people call it different things, but it's basically your beliefs, your conditioning as it relates to love, as it relates to dating, as it relates to men, as it relates to marriage. And it starts forming from the time that we're born, essentially. And, you know, it's forming at the same time. You know, when we're first starting out, we don't have like a subconscious or a conscious. We just take everything in. And so that's how our love blueprint forms also. We're just taking everything in like a sponge, you know, and then once you reach 7, 8, you sort of start sifting through the information a little bit better and a little bit more clearly. But many of us do not ever take the time to like, look what's already been put in there, you know? And so this essentially becomes the way that we operate. This is the way that we view everything, is through this lens, essentially, that we created as children. It's like our operating system. You know, so it's really interesting when you think about it in terms of an operating system, because it's like, imagine if you were using a computer from 20 years ago. You know, it's like if you were trying to watch this on a computer from 2000, or, you know, if you're older than 27, it's going to be older than that. If you're 37, we're talking about a computer from 30 years ago. So that's how you're operating in love, though, with this old, outdated operating system. And there's no one set way that it's always going to form. Peter's brother may not operate exactly the same way that Peter does, even though they have the same parents and they grew up in the same household. So everyone is going to still have their own twist on it. But, you know, a lot of times what it's coming down to is what we're experiencing as a child, that becomes normalized for us. That to us is going to be love. And the really rough part is that, like, it doesn't matter if that wasn't love. It doesn't matter if it wasn't the kind of love that you want. That's going to be your default. Now, I have to make this caveat that even if that's your default, I'm not saying that you are hopeless or like you're just destined to be this way forever. Like, that's not the case. I, like most people, did not have a perfect love blueprint. But, you know, often, not always, but often it's going to be closely related to something that was going on with our parent of the gender that of the sex that we're attracted to. So Peter is a straight man. His is very much based on his relationship with his mother. So for Peter, dramatics and crying and you need to do what I say and working through things, like that became normalized because that's what he saw from his mother. To him, he's not looking at these women as like, wow, you're being over the top dramatic. He's saying, this to me is love. This is normal to me. Women will have a similar sort of thing. And sometimes they're also going to get it from their father, but sometimes they get it from their mother. So if you're a woman where it's like, you're the one who's creating the drama. So in this season, we saw a lot of it from Victoria F. Victoria F is stunning. She's so beautiful. And we saw her in many situations be very articulate and very witty and like quick, but then when it came to talking about her feelings, and unclear if this was an actual inability or if she was seeing this sort of weak point in Peter and was feeding into it. We have no way of knowing. But either way, when it came to her conversations and her discussions with Peter, there was no communication at all. It was completely shut down. It was only about the theatrics. I can't do this. Like, I can't, I'm done. I'm so done. It's like, she was never done. She was never done until Peter said she was done. So it's like, that becomes some people's love blueprint. I don't want to get too far off topic, but it was like in Love is Blind, we saw a similar thing with Janina. She was a character where her love blueprint was also sort of like Peter's, where it's like the drama felt very normal. And she had a similar thing with her mother, where her mother was very over the top and really made things about her. So that's what we saw with Peter, was that he was, and what it often comes down to is that we're essentially trying to heal the relationship with the parent through a new partner. So for him to be able to console Victoria and communicate with her clearly, it's like subconsciously he's trying to heal his relationship with his own mother, where, I could never make my mom feel better. I could never get her to be happy and proud of me, but like, I'm going to do that now with my current partner. So the way that I've actually seen this play out with women, like more commonly than the drama blueprint, which is not uncommon, but the way that I see it more than anything is with unavailable partners. That is probably the biggest one that I come across, which is, women who just really are only attracted to men that are emotionally unavailable to them. And I always say to them because, we like to label men as emotionally unavailable, but often these men do end up having relationships and getting married and committing to someone. So they're not unavailable forever. And again, it's not saying that the woman that he eventually commits to is better than you. That's not it at all. It's about the dynamic being created between you, because we're always communicating with each other subconsciously. That's why you can walk into a room and you can feel a connection with someone right away. And it's not always just like, oh my God, he's so gorgeous. He's 6'4" and he's got this amazing hair and these gorgeous eyes. It's because of this subconscious, unconscious communication that we have. And when we feel that lightning bolt where it's just like, oh my God, like, what is this? I've never felt this way about anyone. Sometimes it's like, oh, this is really a great person for you. But a lot of times it's not. A lot of times we feel that thunderbolt, that electricity with someone who's just connecting with our love blueprint. Their neuroses are lining up perfectly with neuroses, and we're calling it chemistry. We're calling it love. We're calling it soulmate. But it feels familiar because it's part of our trauma. It's part of the patterning, the programming that is natural to us, that feels normal to us. So yeah, that's one that I really very frequently see, is that, a woman will have a parent that was unavailable to them in some way. Sometimes it's in a big way where a parent died or a parent left and they don't have much interaction. And sometimes it comes from them being unavailable in a much smaller way. Dad always worked late, or, this isn't a small way. This would also be a big way. Substances, a parent who has, alcoholism or has an addiction. That would be another big way that a person is actually unavailable. But then sometimes it's just them working late, or, they're preoccupied with sports or whatever it is, something where you're not getting the amount of attention that you as a child needed. And then that becoming normal, that feeling like love. And so continuously you're attracted to people that are emotionally unavailable to you. And it's that same sort of thing where it's like unconsciously you're trying to win them over. You're trying to heal that relationship with your parents because, you know, if my lover acts differently than dad did, then it means that like ultimately I am lovable. Like I can get that. So it goes, I mean, it gets deep really fast, obviously, but yeah, that's really, I mean, that's definitely what I saw with Peter. And I can see how a lot of people could relate to that. And it's easy to look at a woman like Barb because we only see her for a few minutes and she was edited in a certain way and it was easy for her to become the villain. I did not enjoy watching her. But of course, many people have mothers or fathers that are like that, where they're more thinking about what's best for them rather than what's best for their child. Or, you know, a child might feel like, if you don't do what I want, I'm not going to love you. You know, and people move into this sort of people pleasing where they're constantly seeking approval, which is something we also saw from Peter. Like he really did not want anyone to ever be upset with him. He didn't want to, he was pussyfooting. Like he was nervous about making the wrong move quite a bit. And that's like a similar sort of thing.
Yeah. What sort of patterns do you notice, having now we're into 20 something seasons of The Bachelor, I think? What have you noticed about the difference between, in the end, the women who get chosen and the ones who get overlooked? What can you share with our audience and some insights that maybe they can take about that?
Yeah, that's such a good question. So I think there's a couple of things that we can look at. I think one of the things that we really want to notice, and a distinction between the Bachelor and the Bachelorette, when the woman is the lead, it's a little bit of a different dynamic. And people hate hearing this, right? Like no one wants to hear this, but men who are in their masculine, they like to pursue someone. They want and often will require a woman that they have to make an effort for. And people get mad at me all the time, you know, because it's so anti-feminist. And I'm like, I don't care about that. All I care about is helping women find a love that they want. And if what you desire is a driven masculine man, and that's not the only kind of man, there are wonderful, wonderful partners available who aren't like that. And if that's what you want, then go for it, because those men can make amazing partners as well. A lot of the women that I come across and work with, they want very masculine men. But then they want to pursue the relationship. They want to call him first. They want to ask him out. They want to say, where is this going? They want to say, you know, when am I going to see you again? Men who are in their masculine, they want someone that they have to pursue, that they have to make an effort for. And when a man is serious about someone, he will chase her down. So what I think you can see in terms of a pattern with something like The Bachelor is that often the woman that he really cares for, that he really likes, is the one that he still has to chase, even in this context where there's 30 women chasing him. It's the one who hasn't arrived. It's the one who's like, you seem cool, I'll get to know you, but like, I'm going to get to know you before I decide anything. So in this season, it was Madison. Madison was far and away the front runner. He cared for her at a different level from the beginning. And you could see it because she was the only one that he ever was like, let me think of something special, and like ask the producers to set up something special for me and Madison on a group date. I don't remember exactly what the context was, but on one of the group dates, he was like, Madison, I have something for you. And he had like a little surprise plan. Like clearly he got production involved to set something up, you know? So it's like, he still had to make an effort for her. And she set herself apart very early on. In the very first episode of the season, all of the women are coming forward to him and they're saying, let me tell you this thing about myself. And I'm so close with my family. I love my family. Here's what's important to me. And they're telling him all these things. And that's good and important. You're going to have to share about yourself. It's important to share like what you desire, what you want. Madison did something different. Madison, in one of their first conversations, she said to him, tell me something interesting. And it's such a simple thing. It's so small, and it's not about the words. It's not about the line. It's the energy behind it, which is she's not saying, let me tell you everything so that you'll fall in love with me, which is what most of the women do. She's saying, I'm here. I showed up. I look good. I smell good, which is all I have to do. Like, let's see if I'm interested in you. And he latched onto that. She was a front runner. Now, the other woman who was the other front runner, Hannah Ann, what she did was really interesting in terms of a manifesting perspective, because she manifested this relationship. Like she really went in, not of the mindset, like, I don't have him, how can I get him? She was like, he's mine. He's mine, I've got him. And she had him from the beginning. The problem was that there was no real feeling behind it. She was doing it as a game, just as a practice. And so she won the game, but there wasn't a deep enough connection. And so this is another thing that happens when you just decide a particular man has to be the one, when you're like, this guy is it, and you don't go deeper, because you can manifest him, you can get him, you can have that relationship, but like, then there's nothing there to actually sustain it. And being in a relationship, like, that's just not how relationships survive. That's not how they move into marriage, especially if you want like a real, committed, loving, soulful, deep relationship. It's got to be based more on just like, oh, I want to manifest this particular person, so I'm going to do it. That's what she did. That was like, Hannah Ann is like a case study in manifesting a specific person. But even during their proposal, the vibe was very much, she was like, I won. Like, I actually won. Like, I did it. It wasn't like, the love of my life is proposing to me, I can't wait to commit to this person. She won. She won a prize. It was like she won a contest. It would have been just the same as if she'd won a contest at the mall for a diamond necklace. She was like, oh, my prize is that diamond ring. Thank you very much. I'll take that. And like, oh, Peter, I guess we're together now. There was a disconnect. So she did a great job manifesting, but there wasn't enough behind it. Madison was the one who was like, there actually was potential for a real relationship. I think Peter screwed that up, and we don't have to get into the specifics of that, but Madison really had standards. She really was making it so that she was the prize. He had to win her over, and he was like, sounds like a challenge, I'm up for it, because that's how men are. Men want a challenge. They want a woman that they have to fight for. Men always want to feel like they're winning. They will commit when they're like, I'm going to be better off for committing to this woman. I'm going to be better off when this woman is my girlfriend. I'm going to be better off when this is my wife. They aren't doing it because of time pressure. Women, part of it is just like, it's time pressure. Part of it is just anyone they like, they're going to want to be with. Like, women are much more fluid and amorphous in that way. Like, a woman can say, I don't want a relationship right now. But if she meets someone who has the qualities she really wants, she's like, okay, I'll see if I can make it work. Men don't do that. If he has decided that now is not his time, he's not getting married until he's 30 or 40 or for 3 years or whatever it is, they very rarely are going to veer from that. But when they are ready, or when they think that they're ready, they want someone where they feel like they're going to win. They're going to make the effort to be with that person where they're winning. And so it's like, part of it is a little bit dysfunctional when it gets to the point that they only ever want the person that doesn't want them. But the general idea that a man wants a woman that he can win over, that's pretty standard. And we can see that across a lot of the Bachelor seasons. I mean, the season before was Colton, same thing. He wanted the one where he had to work for her. He had to put in the effort to pursue her. And he did. He was like, everyone else is out of here. I'm going to get the girl that I want, even though she wasn't quite ready. Now, I'm not saying that I think that that's the ideal relationship or that they're meant to be or anything like that. It's just about the way men approach things and men's intentions. And the women that are set apart are the ones where he has to put in the effort and has to really prove himself. Men want to be better, and they often look to women to be that way. So when he feels like, I have to be better to deserve you, those are the ones that like stand out. Those are the ones where he's going to really open up his heart and be inspired to commit in a powerful way that's coming from like deep within himself.
And we've seen, and I guess this also plays into why the success rate for lasting couples from The Bachelorette is actually better than The Bachelor when it's a female lead and multiple men pursuing. Do you want to elaborate a little bit on that?
Totally. It's a dynamic that's much more suited for, for men to compete for a woman. They're tapping into that primal part of themselves, and women like that. Like, when a man is like, oh, I'm going to fight for you, we're like, oh, like, it's that part of ourselves that like we don't want to admit to. High-powered career women don't want to say like, I want a man that's going to fight for me. It doesn't sound modern, but many women do want that. Whether you want to admit it or not all, obviously some women don't want that, and that's fine also, but many women do want that. And men want a woman that they have to fight for. If a man sees that 4 other men want his woman, it's like, I'm going to win if I have her. Like, that's putting me on top. This is a valuable woman. I'm definitely going to be better off. So it sort of taps into, the more primal part of us, but in a positive way. To have a bunch of women chasing after a man, it's not the same. Men in a sexual way might really enjoy that. But in terms of a woman they're going to commit to, that's not something that's going to put her higher up. You know, oh, she really fought for me. Again, not every single man. Some men will like that. But often men who really require that, who would really say it's important for me to have someone who's going to fight for me, they're either more in their feminine or they're coming from a more insecure place. It's very rare that you're going to meet a man who is confident and in his masculine and driven, who's like, oh, it's important that she fights for me. They want to know that you're there. They want to make sure that you love them for who they are. But fight for you, no, guys are not. That's not something you're going to hear from many men. It's just not something that they desire. They're not driven. Like, we're not set up the same. We want different things. We want to feel different ways in a relationship. Men definitely want to feel appreciated. They want to feel like a man, but generally speaking, they don't need to feel like, oh, you're going to take someone out for me. You know, They might get a thrill of it in the moment, but generally speaking, that's not going to be something that's going to inspire a deeper level of commitment or love or, you know, admiration from them.
Yeah. So as we have this fly on the wall type of view of inside these reality dating TV shows, what else do you notice that you can see that women are doing wrong, that's really preventing them from creating the connections inside these shows? What else can we learn?
I mean, I think another big mistake is putting too much stock into a man who's essentially a stranger. So, you know, we'll see in week 1 and week 2, women get sent home. And it's sometimes the most heartbreaking part of the show is these women who are getting sent home after meeting a man for a couple of hours. And they're like, what's wrong with me? When is it going to be my time? I'm never going to meet someone. You know, why didn't he see this in me? And they're really hurt. And rejection always hurts. Rejection is not fun. But there's a difference between being able to say, this wasn't my person, onward and upward, versus what's wrong with me because this person didn't want me. And putting so much weight into this individual man's opinion of you, especially when he doesn't know you, you know? And so I think the way this translates to the real world is when you go on you go on 1 or 2 dates with someone and he doesn't call. And women who are devastated by this, like, I thought we had such a great connection. It was so amazing. I don't understand. Like, when is it going to be my turn? I'm never going to find someone. And it's just like, you know, panic and such upset. It's like, no. Him saying, I don't think that we're a match, whether through his words or through his actions, does not have to reflect on who you are or your value or your worthiness or whether or not you get to have love. But so long as you are making it mean that, it will mean that. So if every time you go out with someone, that to you means I don't get love, I'm not beautiful enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm not sexy enough, I'm not desirable enough, then that becomes true. It's not true. He doesn't even know you. Like, this man does not know you, especially after a date or 2. Like, he does not know you. So his wanting to be with you or not should not have any impact on your own worthiness or sense of lovability or belief that you get to have the love that you want. But that's a big mistake that women make a lot, is just putting too much stock in a man too early on. I think another really big thing is overemphasizing, you know, some of the words that he might say. And not that you cannot ever trust a man's words. Sometimes you have to trust his words. I mean, and you want a man who you can trust his words. But putting, again, too much meaning into words that at the beginning can just be words. You know, it's like, not that they're intentionally lying, but sometimes a guy is just saying things to sort of see how they sound or see how you're going to react to them. And it doesn't mean that's per se what's about to happen. You know, him saying, oh, my mom would love you. Women will take that as like, oh my God, he must really think I'm special. Like, he's going to tell his family about me. And he just meant you said something that sounded like something his mom said. In Love is Blind, actually, we saw a specific example of this, because when they were in the pods, the guy Barnett said to several of the women, he was doing this exact thing. He was sort of trying things on. He was just testing things out. And he said to 3 different women, you know, something about, I could see myself marrying you. And again, he wasn't trying to be manipulative, I don't think. I didn't get the sense that he was being malicious. He was trying it out. He was just seeing how they would respond. And one of the women took it very literally. And she said, oh my God, he's proposing to me tomorrow. And he was not. He was not proposing to her tomorrow. And she took it too far. Until there's sort of an action backing up what he's saying, you want to just take the words for words, especially if your love language is words of affirmation, which mine is. I am someone who loves words. Hearing, oh, you're so beautiful. I can't stop thinking about you. You're special. Like that to me, it really gets to me. And I know a lot of other women, words of affirmation is one of their love languages. So it's just something you have to be aware of, is that until you know someone, until you know what their character is, until you know what their word actually means, you take the words with a grain of salt. And that's it. So that's a big mistake that I see, and it's very clear on reality television. Just putting too much stock in the words and putting too much stock in his opinion in general and whether or not he chooses you.
There's an interesting thing that we notice with these shows and with The Bachelor as well, and you talked about the women that are really devastated that they're not chosen per se. It's almost like their inner teenage girl that wanted the cool or the hot or the popular guy at school to choose them overrides all of their like emotional control and all of their motivations when it comes to men. And we talked a little bit about how that relates to the love blueprint, but just to give some of our audience a bit of an insight into like what does the inner work involve? Where do they start? What are some of the ways in which they can address some of these patterns that we've talked about today?
I think the simplest way to start is look at your patterns. And you're going to have patterns. Everyone's going to have patterns. So wherever you are, just start with where you are and just go backwards. If you're someone who dates a lot or has a lot of relationships, you may not have to go that far backwards, but like look at the maybe last 5 guys you were involved with. If it's rare that you date, then maybe you're gonna have to go back several years, but what are the patterns? What are you seeing really consistently? When I did this, it was really easy for me to see, wow, the thing that connects them all is that they were all unavailable. They were all emotionally unavailable to me. Maybe you have a different sort of pattern. Maybe they all put you down. Maybe they all come on strong and then disappear. Maybe they all lie. Maybe they all have cheated on you. Maybe they've all, whatever it is, just notice what the patterns are. Maybe it's that you never feel attraction. Maybe you only go with guys that really, really like you and you don't feel anything towards them and you just sort of tolerate it. Maybe you always have crushes on your friends and then it sort of messes up your friendships. So just start by looking at what your pattern is. That's the simplest thing. This is also not always the easiest thing because we don't always want to see our own patterns, but often our closest girlfriends will see our patterns and you can ask them and they'll tell you in a second. They'll be like, yeah, here's exactly what your problem is. But it's like, you want to sort of start by looking at that and then see like, what does this feel like? When's the first time I can recall ever feeling this? And you want to go as far back as you can. The further back you can go with the memory, the more profound and impactful it'll be. Often there are things when we're in high school where we feel that sense of rejection or exclusion, but often it goes further back to that. If you can think of a time from when you were a kid, maybe when you were 6 or 5 or 7, that'll be really powerful. And a lot of times people will have a vivid memory and they'll be like, I know what this feels like. This feels like the time, my mom yelled at me for doing this particular thing that I didn't do. My sister did, but I got blamed for, and it's, the thing is like, you don't have to overthink it because what you're doing is looking at the pattern for yourself and trying to come up with where it comes from. Sometimes people will say, well, I don't remember, or I don't know if this is right, or I don't know if it exactly happened that way. And that doesn't really even matter. Your interpretation is the only thing that matters. So it's like kids misinterpret stuff. Like you may think something happened a certain way and it didn't ever actually happen in that particular way. But if that's how you remember it, that's how it's impacting you. And so that's what you want to sort of look at and understand and, pull apart so that you can just release it and move forward. Often we are taking these particular things and we're making them mean something about us. And then we're carrying that meaning through out our lives. So, you know, even something like, you know, my dad was working late and he missed my birthday when I was 6. You know, you could have made that mean something. That could mean that I'm not important, or no one loves me, or, you know, the things that are important to me aren't important to anyone else. And it was never true, you know? If that were the case, I'm sure dad would be like, I forgot. It's not because it wasn't important. It's because I was so scared at work. I was about to lose my company and I was just doing everything I could to keep the family afloat. And everything I did was for like my kids and my wife. But like, kids misinterpret things, right? But all throughout your life, you're going to be then looking to prove that. You're going to be looking for those situations that prove I'm not that important. So when you can sort of recognize where that comes from, you can question it. You can look at it. You can say, wow, that actually isn't true. I'm willing to let that go. Sometimes it feels really good and expansive to look and see where things come from and pull them apart. But it's not always required. Sometimes it's as easy as making a decision and saying, oh, this is a pattern I've had. I'm done with that. I'm not acting that way anymore. You can make a decision. So I'm not trying to say it always has to be this deep excavation and pulling all this stuff up. It can be powerful. And if that feels aligned and good, then that's a great approach. But it can also be as simple as making a decision to do something different. A lot of times, just having the awareness, bringing something that's been in our subconscious into our conscious is powerful enough. You know, awareness is a really, really powerful place to start.
And what I love is that you're actually going to be sharing a beautiful tool with our audience to help them with that first step of identifying their patterns, right? Tell us a little bit about the quiz.
So I have a free quiz that you can take, and it is so good. It's going to help you discover your love type. Now, it's not completely exhaustive. You're still going to have to do some work, but this is really going to help you get a clear way of sort of starting your own excavation into your patterns. It's going to make it really clear which direction you should be looking in. It'll help you discover some of the biggest blocks you're likely coming up against, some of the biggest mistakes that you're making, and a clear path forward for doing things differently. So that's a free quiz. It only takes a few minutes, but the results will be really powerful and very eye-opening and insightful. So you're going to definitely want to take that. Just answer the questions honestly. Don't overthink it. Like I said, you can do it in a couple of minutes. And then the work you do after that is what will be really profound and allow you to really step into that next level.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Crystal, for sharing that gift with our audience. Make sure you follow the link below the video today and check out the love quiz and find out what your love patterns and love blueprint is. I've got a couple of questions before we finish up, and these ones are kind of hypothetical ones. One about Love is Blind and one about The Bachelor. So first of all, my question is, Hannah Ann, if she had have been a little bit more reserved in terms of making a decision about whether Peter was suitable for her, like Madison did, do you think they might have ended up together?
Great question. I don't know. I don't think so. I don't think that her coming forward was the only reason. I think that on some level, they didn't connect at as deep of a level as Peter really wants to. And as we've seen that Peter's able to, you know, even watching him with Hannah Brown, he had a deeper, it seems like, connection with her. So I don't think that was, you know, I don't think that she made a mistake that kept her from being with her person. I don't think that they were ultimately the right fit. It may have made him a little bit more inspired to maybe try harder or to think about it more seriously. But I think that probably energetically there was something that was just a little bit off and they weren't going to get to that beyond the surface relationship.
Interesting, and I definitely agree. Barnett and your favorite Love is Blind character who had a meltdown when he was confusing her with her words. What's her name again?
Jessica.
If she had have handled that differently, because she seemed to be his front runner until that all went down. If that had have been handled differently, do you think What do you think he would have chosen her?
I don't think so. I don't think so. I think that Jessica put way more weight onto that relationship than he did. I think that we didn't see the full extent of his relationship with Amber. We saw a lot more of their playful stuff, but I think that they did have some of those deeper conversations. And, you know, if I'm being honest, I think that when they saw each other, Jessica felt way more attracted to Barnett. You know, she already had liked him the best. And then when she saw him, she was like, oh, this is totally my type. I don't think he felt that way. I think when he saw them, he was like, oh, I'm happy I'm with Amber. Jessica's still a beautiful woman. I'm not making a comment saying she's unattractive or she looks old or anything like that. But I do think that Amber would have been much more physically his type. And I think that Barnett was sort of trying to stretch himself a little bit by even committing in this process. And I think even if they had been together, I don't think that they would have stayed together. I think that, you know, Jessica was putting a lot of emphasis on the age difference between her and Mark. And Burnett was also younger than she is. And I think she had these grandiose ideas that once he was with her, he was just going to become this incredible man and he was going to be so sophisticated and elegant. And he'd be so different. And I don't think that's the case. Like, I don't think that they would have been that compatible. And I think she would have noticed the age difference with Barnett more than she would have with Mark. Mark is younger by 3 years than Barnett. So he was 10 years younger than her. But a big thing people have to keep in mind is that he's from a culture where it's very typical for men to get married young. And that's a big difference when you're talking about a man in his 20s who's looking for commitment. You know, men that are, you know, Latin or Mormon or Jewish, it's like those are cultures where, and there's others, it's not an exhaustive list, but just as an example, those are cultures where men often get married young. So he would have, I think, stepped up to be a husband, even if there's growing pains for him. Barnett, as a secular American frat boy type, that's not his culture, that's not his background. So yeah, he was only 7 years younger rather than 10, but 7 years is still quite a bit younger than someone, and especially if they don't have the maturity or the bandwidth or the desire to be, you know, sort of what she was imagining. I think that he was just really fit well into her love blueprint, and she just wanted him. But no, I don't see that having worked out. And the other thing is because he did fit so perfectly into her love blueprint, it's like he always would have been a little bit unavailable to her. That's the pattern. That's what she was sort of looking for, and that's what she would have found with him.
So girls, if you have noticed some of these patterns that you can relate to, if any of the characters from these shows you identify with and you want to get more of the juicy insider information and all of Crystal's views, she shares a lot about it, which I absolutely love. Where's the best place to catch you, Crystal? Which social media platform are you hanging out on the most?
I mean, you can find me very easily on Instagram. I share a lot of my thoughts there, and it's just my name. Instagram, Crystal Irom.
Incredible. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, your opinions, and having this amazing conversation with me and all of our audience as part of this virtual retreat.
It was my pleasure. This was so fun. Thank you so much for having me. And yeah, I'm looking forward to connecting with you.
Thanks again. We'll see you all tomorrow.